American Apparel looked like the future of fashion because it refused to behave like the rest of fashion. At a time when clothing companies were pushing production overseas, American Apparel built its identity around making clothes in Los Angeles. It sold t-shirts, hoodies, underwear, bodysuits, and other basics, but the product was never just fabric. The product was the feeling around the fabric. It was youth culture, sexual confidence, political attitude, urban minimalism, and the promise that a simple shirt could say something about the person wearing it. That was the genius of the business. American Apparel took items that could have been commodities and turned them into identity. The company was founded in 1998, and before it became a mall-era cultural symbol, it had a practical core: wholesale blank apparel. It supplied t-shirts and casual wear to distributors and screen printers. That gave the company volume before the retail image became famous. Then, in 2003, it opened its first retail store in Los Angeles. A year later, it expanded online and began opening stores outside the United States. This was not just a fashion label with good marketing. American Apparel tried to own the machine behind the brand. It manufactured domestically. It distributed its own products. It operated stores. It sold online. It ran wholesale. It controlled the look, the message, the factory, and the retail experience. In an industry built on outsourcing, that made American Apparel feel unusually real. The sweatshop-free message was not only a slogan, it was connected to how the company actually operated. That gave the brand a kind of proof most competitors could not easily copy. If a customer wanted cheap basics, there were cheaper options. But if a customer wanted basics with a story, American Apparel had something stronger than price. It had meaning. The model also had real operating advantages. Keeping production close to the company's Los Angeles base allowed faster reaction to demand, tighter quality control, and quick replenishment of popular styles. Instead of waiting months for distant production cycles, American Apparel could present itself as faster, closer, and more controlled. For a while, this combination was powerful. The clothes were simple enough to scale. The image was distinct enough to stand out. The manufacturing story made the brand feel ethical. The advertising made it impossible to ignore, and the stores turned the whole thing into a physical experience. American Apparel became the kind of brand people recognized instantly. Not because the clothes were complicated, but because the company made basics feel charged with identity. By the mid-2010s, the business was no longer a niche operation. It described itself as a vertically integrated manufacturer, distributor, and retailer. It had thousands of employees, hundreds of stores, a wholesale business, and an e-commerce site serving customers across many countries. In 2014, it generated about $609 million in net sales. That scale mattered because it showed American Apparel was not only culturally loud, it had become a serious commercial machine. But the same machine that made the company different also made it fragile. Domestic manufacturing is powerful when sales are strong. Stores are powerful when traffic is strong. Vertical control is powerful when management discipline is strong. But when momentum weakens, those strengths become heavy. Payroll does not shrink just because the brand feels less fresh. Leases do not disappear because fewer people walk into stores. A factory does not become cheap because demand softens. American Apparel had built a business around control, and control came with bills that kept arriving. This is where the story becomes more than a founder scandal or a fashion trend fading. The central problem was structural. The company had attached a cultural identity to an expensive operating system. That system needed consistent demand to stay healthy. In 2014, the warning signs were already visible. U.S. retail sales fell, mainly because existing stores were getting less traffic. Canadian retail sales declined. International sales declined. Online sales showed some strength in certain areas, but not enough to change the overall pressure. The company reported operating losses, heavy interest expense, and a net loss for the year. For a lightweight brand, weaker demand is painful. For American Apparel, it was dangerous. The company was carrying stores, manufacturing, distribution, advertising, legal risk, management changes, and debt at the same time. When sales weakened, the pressure did not stay inside the income statement. It moved into liquidity, it moved into lender covenants, it moved into survival. By the end of 2014, American Apparel was not in compliance with certain financial rules inside one of its credit facilities. Those violations were waived, but the signal was clear. The business was not simply having a bad year. Its financial structure was starting to tighten around it. Then the leadership problem made a hard situation even harder. Dov Charney was not a distant founder. He was deeply tied to the company's taste, culture, advertising, and public identity. That kind of founder can be an advantage during the rise. It creates speed, it creates conviction, it creates a brand that does not feel designed by committee. But founder dependence becomes a risk when the company needs stable governance. In 2014, American Apparel suspended Charney and later fired him after an investigation into misconduct. The details were serious, but for the business story, the important point is this: the company lost its central figure while it was already under financial pressure. That created a brutal combination. American Apparel needed focus, investor confidence, operational discipline, and a credible turnaround. Instead, it had falling momentum, debt pressure, legal conflict, public controversy, and a brand identity that was difficult to separate from the person who had shaped it. This is why the collapse cannot be reduced to one cause. Fast fashion mattered because competitors trained shoppers to expect constant newness and lower prices. The shift away from mall traffic mattered because stores were a major part of the model. E-commerce mattered because retail habits were changing. The founder crisis mattered because trust and governance matter when a company needs capital. But none of those forces alone explains the story. They became fatal because American Apparel had so little room for error. A cheaper outsourced retailer could respond to pressure by moving production, changing suppliers, or cutting inventory risk faster. American Apparel could not do that without damaging the very identity that made it special. The Los Angeles factory was brand proof, but also cost. The stores were brand theater, but also leases. The provocative image created attention, but also reputation risk. The company had built its strength and weakness from the same materials. In 2015, American Apparel filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The plan was not to disappear immediately. The company expected to reduce its debt sharply by converting bond debt into equity and continue operating. On paper, that kind of restructuring can make a business look lighter. The people owed money become owners, debt pressure falls, management gets breathing room. But Chapter 11 is not a magic cure. It can reset the balance sheet, but it cannot automatically restore store traffic. It cannot make a brand culturally fresh again. It cannot repair governance trust overnight. It cannot make an expensive operating model cheap. American Apparel emerged from bankruptcy in early 2016, but the reset did not hold. Later that same year, it filed for bankruptcy again. By then, the story had changed. The question was no longer whether the original company could return to its peak. The question was what part of it still had value. The answer was the brand. In 2017, Gildan completed the acquisition of the American Apparel brand and certain assets. The winning bid included worldwide intellectual property rights connected to the name, along with certain manufacturing equipment. But Gildan did not buy the retail store assets. That distinction is the ending of the whole story. The name survived. The original machine did not. Today, American Apparel still exists as a brand around basics, t-shirts, hoodies, and an ethics-oriented message. But the business that created the original cultural heat, the founder-driven, store-heavy Los Angeles manufacturing system, was broken apart. That is what makes American Apparel such a sharp business case. It did not collapse because identity is worthless. It collapsed because identity has to be supported by economics strong enough to carry it. The company proved that even basic clothing can become a cultural signal. It proved that manufacturing can become part of a brand's moral story. It proved that control can create speed, quality, and distinction. But it also proved the limit of that control. A brand can make customers care. It can make a t-shirt feel like a statement. It can make a factory part of the mythology. But if the structure behind the brand becomes too expensive, too centralized, too indebted, and too dependent on constant momentum, recognition is not enough. American Apparel's name was valuable enough to survive bankruptcy. The empire behind it was not.